but welcome. We're glad to have you. In 1949, two doctors, Sewell and Glenn, invented the very, very first attempt at an artificial heart at Yale School of Medicine. They did it using odds and sods from the 5 and 10 cents. Can you hear, Jason? You're looking like is it all good? All right. They did it using odds and sods from the 5 and 10 cent store and bits and pieces from a Meccano set. A dog lived on this first artificial heart for over an hour. Since that time, in the last 60 years, there have been in excess of 100 iterations of the artificial heart at an excess of tens of millions of dollars. And it's, of course, only possible with extensive design, research, and innovation. And yet, merely 100 cardiac patients benefit from the artificial heart in any given year. Research and design and the iterative process are generally recognized as the cost of advancement. Yet the level of design that we saw with the artificial heart and with much of science and technology is rarely seen in the mental health field, where matters of the heart, such as emotional and mental health, family relationships, and parenting, are, they affect millions and millions of people, but they're rarely considered worth the while. In 2006, Out of the Shadows at Last was released. It was a federal paper that set the stage for Canada's first mental health strategy. And in it, Michael Kirby writes of the woefully inadequate funding for mental health and addictions and its research. It's a call to action for Canada, where we invest just 7% of our healthcare spending in mental health and addictions, despite the estimates that over 15% of our disease burden is accounted for by mental health. And that is second only to cardiovascular disease, which accounts for 18%. So in addition to advocating for increased funding in this report, he also suggests specifically that the federal government should invest in research. And he suggests that the Canadian Institute for Health Research should lead the charge. The fact that research has been woefully inadequate in the mental health sector is borne out in our years of experience in this industry, where attention to design has typically been overshadowed by the need to simply keep our programs afloat. After all, it's difficult to entertain research and advancement while struggling to keep programs open. The growth and refinement of the sector has been largely marginalized, like the people we serve. So it's easy for me, for the rest of us, to become discouraged with the perpetual cycle of promising service development that only ends in premature decline due to lack of funding. Yet, as Kong Ron suggests, at KW Counselling, excellence in service is one of our key service objectives. And this means that we must be determined to break that cycle. In 2011, Wilfrid Laurier, University-Waterloo, and KW Counselling secured funding from the Canadian Institute for Health Research for a second generation of research into the clinical and cost effectiveness of our walk-in counselling clinic. I suspect the grant was possible as a result of the call to action in '06 by Kirby. I'm also confident that this investment in KW Counselling's walk-in was money well spent. In my entire career, of all the things I've done in the last 30 years, walk-in is the service that we launched that I am singly most proud of. It is my greatest accomplishment. And the research shows what our instinct tells us, that we're on to something. We're now equipped with the data that allows Waterloo Region and the province to understand the invaluable place that walk-in counseling must take in the mental health and addiction service delivery system. Our studies show that walk-in is clinically effective and it reduces high levels of psychological distress. 19% of visitors say that they would go to the emergency department if walk-in hadn't existed. Walk-in is more effective than traditional counseling for people with very complex needs. It's more effective for people with depression and anxiety than traditional counseling with its waiting lists. It's more accessible to men, with men making up almost half of our visitors. And it is incredibly accessible and relevant, and it capitalizes on what we call readiness to change by seeing clients in their moment of need instead of leaving them to languish on unacceptably long waiting lists. Our community is clearly demonstrating that walk-in is relevant and valued. Attendance has gradually climbed from 30 visitors a week in 2007 to our record day of 96 earlier this year. 96 folks who came for an hour-and-a-half session. I figure we were assigning a client every 3 3/4 minutes. We've delivered excellent, timely, and effective service, but there's a limit to our capacity. We're appealing to Waterloo Wellington Local Health Integration Network and our community to support the needed expansion of the service. We envision a day where walk-in is available every day of the week in Waterloo Region, and even bigger than that, I expect to see it across the province. So in 2016, we saw advancement through research and design, but it wasn't just in the walk-in counseling arena. There were 3 other programs I'd like to talk about as well. So going back in time, in 2005, Family and Children's Services and KW Counselling came together to discuss their shared concerns for rainbow youth in Waterloo Region. We were deeply troubled with what we were seeing, and we suspected the root cause lay in intolerance, homo, bi, and transphobia. We saw young people who presented with greater mental health challenges, homelessness, and suicidality. Our friends over at Child Welfare were incredibly saddened by the number of LGBTQ youth who were going into care, abandoned by their families at far, far higher rates than the rest of the population. OK to Be Me saw its very beginnings with a community-wide study. And thinking back on it, it may have been one of our first efforts at design thinking. We conducted a study with Colleen Loomis, who is with Wilfrid Laurier. She's a psychologist. And we conducted that study in the partnership with FNCS. And the study resulted in a report that was entitled, What Queer Youth Experience, Need, and Want from Mental Health Services in Waterloo Region. It formed the basis of the early OK to Be Me program. The program was designed by exploring the experiences of rainbow youth and their perceptions of services, supports, and barriers. As far as I'm concerned, the greatest evidence of the effectiveness of the robust OK to Be Me service delivery design is in its ongoing success and growth. The program includes public education, social recreation, and psychotherapy. And in 2015, we were able to extend that reach with an Ontario Trillium Foundation grant. With that grant, we were able to hold the 5th annual Gay Straight Alliance conference that was attended by over 200 students and teachers. We were able to offer school consultations, business and service consultations for non-conforming trans clients and individuals. And we renewed the OK to Be Me website. And that only happened with a fair bit of input and feedback from our LGBTQ youth. The new website that includes local information for the community and professionals, as well as information on human rights and refugees, saw 19,600 hits last month. Wow. Yeah. Earlier this year, our staff had a lunch and learn on trans sensitivity. The presentation was held by one of our OK to Be Me staff, Spencer Small, and he co-presented with a fellow who identifies as trans. For me, the most gratifying part of the presentation was hearing this gentleman talk about the immensely important role that OK to Be Me had played in his own journey around gender identity 10 years earlier. With the help of the RBC Foundation, OK to Be Me has now extended its services. Where previously we were only able to help children and youth up to the age of 18, we are now able to see folks up to age 29. And we're hopeful that in the not too distant future, we'll be able to offer free counseling supports to rainbow individuals of any age. I'd like to extend my warm thanks to our funders, our staff, and our board for their deep commitment, phenomenal skill, and professionalism in effecting change in social attitudes over the past decade. I believe wholeheartedly that Waterloo Region is a better place to live as a result. For the past 15 years, KW Counselling Services has been offering emotions management courses for kids and schools in the community. In 2015, our community-based temper taming course was revamped with the support of a grant from the Bell Mental Health Foundation. The grant allowed us to uphold our agency-wide commitment to ensure all our programs are attachment informed. Temper Taming Together, which up until last year was only a kids program, is now both a parent and child curriculum. In the parent curriculum, we strengthen the caregiver's ability to respond to their kids' emotions with curiosity, attunement, and connection. Caregivers learn these fundamental skills as their kids are simultaneously learning emotion regulation. Diane McGregor, the director of our Family and Community Solutions program, who authored the new program, is masterful at meaningful evaluation and research and followed the outcomes of the program keenly. The program once again demonstrates what we know, that the parent-child relationship is central to child well-being. The final exciting design initiative that I want to speak about is our Exploring the Future of Parenting Education project. KW Counselling has been offering parenting courses since post-World War II, when our first single mom parenting groups were offered to widows who had been widowed due to the war. Since that time, we've offered hundreds and hundreds of parenting courses, and these have been adapted over time to reflect the latest trends and our best practices. In our early days, like I mentioned, we offered the single moms group. Most recently, we offered an LGB and trans parenting group. These courses, like our Temper Taming Together course, also reflect research into the fundamental role of parent-child relationships, attachment, and its effects on brain development. We're proud of our content and confident that it offers valuable learning, but we began wondering whether the vehicles that we use for sharing the knowledge were going to be useful over time. Will community-based workshops and groups be the best way, the only way to go in the future? I have 3 teenagers, and the coin dropped for me one night at dinner when I asked them how they thought they'd learn about parenting should they become parents one day. They didn't talk about community-based, clinic-based programs. They talked about technology and social media and futuristic ways of staying connected with each other, with parents, with experts. And I came back to work the next day and I grabbed Diane and I told her what they'd said, and we gasped because we realized that we were just given a glimpse into the magnitude of the challenge of parenting education design in the future. The Lyle S. Hallman Foundation is a long-term supporter of the agency. The Hallman Foundation shares our passion for child well-being and prevention, universal prevention. And they acted on that vision by taking a phenomenal risk and funding a parenting education design project, a project that would allow us to go deeply into the experience of parenting and then prototype parent education vehicles. It required the foundation support an initiative without the benefit of knowing in advance what the product would be. I have not known of a funder in my 30 years that was willing to do that. We embarked on this 2-year project in partnership with Overlap Associates, a company that specializes in design thinking and innovation. It's taken us into the experience, needs, and wants of caring adults, and I believe will allow us to make parenting education better in the future. We're over halfway through the project and in the midst of testing prototypes with feedback from parents, which we'll complete over the coming months. And I'm not going to say anything more about it because Brock Hart is here from Overlap and he's going to speak more about design thinking following this meeting. So I'd like to close by thanking all of you for choosing to spend part of your day with us and to celebrate our 65th year. My thanks to staff, board, and funders who share our commitment to making programs better through research, design, and innovation. Thank you for joining us in our work in enhancing relationships and matters of the heart. Together, we are that much closer to being a community where no one's left behind, where relationships are valued as our highest achievement. Thank you.